Welcome to the Reality of Herbal Therapy podcast. So today I kind of wanted to talk to you about another one of Dr. James's 20 herbs. If you haven't heard some of the previous episodes where I've talked about them, they're single herbs that Dr. James would want everybody to have in their homes. Basically, when he first started out in his mail truck and going house to house, people would call him and say, okay, I've got this going on. Like, at midnight, they'd call and say, hey, I've got a horrible headache, or I've got this really bad backache. What do I do for it? And so he would say, well, do you have this? Do you have that? So like, do you have peppermint? Do you have hops? Do you have lobelia? Do you have marshmallow root? And so he would ask him. And of course, most of us don't have all of these herbs on hand. So Dr. James wrote up a little pamphlet of 20 herbs. He's like, okay, these are the 20 herbs you want to have in your house. So when something comes up, you've got something to take care of it instead of having to rush off to the ER or see if you can find some store that's open that late at night or whatever. So that's where the 20 herbs came from. So we've talked about hops and some of the other herbs in the Dr. James had talked about in the 20 herb kit. So I want to talk about another one of the herbs, the juniper berry. So you're probably wondering, what is a juniper berry? Well, short answer, it's pine cone. So juniper berry, if you're not familiar with what a juniper tree is, it's a evergreen shrub, or here in New Mexico they don't get very tall, but it's kind of a shrub, and instead of growing pine cones, it grows these little berries. They look like berries, but they're kind of like tiny pine cones. It's the same thing as a pine cone, but it's enclosed, and that the berries are kind of like the seeds. So it's like a pine cone sort of thing. And it's funny, like talking about all these 20 herbs I've known about the herbs and using the herbs for herbal reasons, but in preparing for these podcasts, I do some reading up on it. And every time, and so like last time when I did hops, first thing comes up is beer. So when you read about juniper berries, the first thing that comes up is gin. And because I don't do alcohol, I'm like, I don't even know like half of these alcohols and what they do and what they're for. But a lot of the alcohols were preservation methods that just sort of like grew from there, and they found what they did and how they helped and stuff. So juniper berries, it's one of the major flavors in gin. This is something new that I found out, and it's been used for thousands of years. The juniper tree or shrub grows it's all over here in New Mexico, but it also grows all over in the Mediterranean. It kind of likes that drier climate. So, along the Mediterranean, South France, Greece, Italy. So it grows all over there. And it even grows into Asia. You've got it in Mongolia and China and stuff. So it's a tree that grows just about everywhere. So it's a really common herb. Somebody once said that the herbs in your backyard are the herbs that you need for whatever is ailing you. We've kind of become more connected throughout the earth that some things are global, but some things are in a certain area. So for example, allergies. If you eat local honey, your allergies will not be as bad. That's because you're ingesting the pollen. And we're going to come back to that with juniper berries. So the juniper berry is it's on a 2-year cycle. So to harvest the berries, when they're ripe and ready for use, it actually takes 2 years for them to grow on the trees. But, like I said, the trees grow everywhere. In New Mexico, if you've got some heights, there's juniper trees everywhere. It's a really common plant. So what is juniper berries used for? So we mentioned gin. It's like a flavoring, and it's used in gin, but it's been used by the Greeks and Romans. Like I said, it grew all over Italy and Greece and south of France and stuff. So they used it as a spice for a flavoring for food. In the long time ago, spices from far off places were not a very common thing. It was really hard to get spices from Asia or Indonesia or the United States or we get spices now from everywhere all over the earth. So for us, it doesn't seem like a weird thing. But, in the Middle Ages and before that, you used what you had because it was very expensive to go out and get it. So it was often used, for the Greeks and the Romans, they used it as a spice, but it was also used medicinally. So it's very common. And same here in the United States, like in the Southwest, a lot of the Native Americans use it for their foods and their medicine also. So it's common. The interesting thing about juniper berries is or juniper, it's used for an incense to purify or to protect from illness. So, sometimes it was burned and people would like kind of hang it over their door to ward off evil spirits and things like that during the Dark Ages and stuff. So the common uses. So most commonly, juniper berry is used to help in digestion, urinary stuff. It really helps the kidneys, the bladder. It helps the prostate to be healthy. And anytime there's kidney issues, or it's kind of like one of those things that goes hand in hand. If there's kidney issues or if there's back pain, they kind of go hand in hand, like lower back pain down where the kidneys are in the lower back, especially off to the sides. If you have pain, your kidneys are one of the essential organs. They have to continue to function no matter what's going on with the rest of the body. So if the kidneys don't have what they need, they'll pull it from the muscles and the bones right next to them so that they have the nutrients that they need to function properly, which can cause back pain because the muscles aren't as healthy or whatever. So if you have lower back pain, feeding and taking care of the kidneys and the bladder will help with that because you're nourishing that entire area. And that's why juniper berries are really helpful in that area. So when you've got that lower back pain too, you've got other things going on, and it can lead to sciatica, which is pretty much a pinched nerve. And once that nerve gets pinched, or even just kind of like it doesn't have as much as all the nutrients it needs, it gets kind of pushed away, it gets inflamed, it gets bigger. And once it's inflamed, it gets pinched easier and you get that pain, and it just shoots all the way down your leg, and it's really painful. But another thing about juniper berries is they're lightly cleansing. So anytime you have anything in your joints, juniper berry will help cleanse it out of the joints. So it's a really, really wonderful herb. So let's talk about some of the different things that juniper berry does. As far as digestion, which is common, it will help with your appetite. It also can help with bloating and gas. So if you're prone to gas or bloating after eating and stuff, if you spice your food with juniper berries, it can help with that. We kind of talked about how it helps with the kidneys and stuff. Juniper berries have the nutrients that the kidneys need to be healthy, but it's also slightly diuretic, so it will help you to urinate, but it also helps to flush the bladder and kidney. So a really great tea to make is juniper berry and parsley. Do those two together, and the juniper berries will flush, and the parsley will will help move any fluff or stones or anything like that. It really makes a huge difference. Another great use for juniper berries is they are antimicrobial. And I'm having a hard time saying it today, but microbial means that it helps to kill microbes in the body. So it's, it kind of helps with any killing microbes in the body, but it's really great also is if you get the essential oil of juniper berries, or you do an infused oil, you can rub it on sore muscles and stuff, or if you've got skin issues, it will help with that as well. And then, going back to it was used as for flavoring to, cover up meats. They use it in meat stews. Juniper berries are very common in sauerkraut. Like this time of year, sauerkraut's really common in Europe and stuff, and they always put whole juniper berries in there to flavor the sauerkraut. So it's really wonderful. So we talked about the uses for it. So let's talk about some of the formulas that have it. So number one that has juniper berries is Bladney. Bladney has it, and we talked about it for kidneys, and it helps with anything with the urinary tract. And along with the other herbs in Bladney, it helps cleanse the kidneys and help the entire urinary system work and function properly. So it's really great. I talked a little bit about how it helps with any arthritic things, rheumatoids and things like that. So, and it's part of that cleansing nature of juniper berries. So Bladney along with arthrite, those two formulas really help with cleansing out joints or anything like that. Anytime that there's stuff in the muscles that your body can't get rid of, there's an acid, uric acid, that gets into the body, or it gets in the muscles. So basically, if you've got kidney or bladder issues, you can get this uric acid, and once it gets into the muscles, like the body has to do something with it because it can't get rid of it through the kidney and bladder. So it gets into the muscles. It's like a liquid, but then once it's in the muscles, it crystallizes and it gets really, really sharp. And that's one of the causes of fibromyalgia. Those sharp crystals, basically anytime you move, your muscles have to move around those crystals, and those crystals tear the muscles. So you're basically in constant pain because you're constantly tearing your muscles. So juniper berries, like in Bladney, is amazing to help clear out the uric acid buildup in the body. And that helps with any, that muscle strain and tension that we have. So earlier I mentioned you eat what you have around you because it helps with allergies. So no surprises there. Juniper berry is in Hayaz. So juniper is if you've ever seen when a juniper tree is pollinating, here in New Mexico, especially when the junipers are pollinating, and if there's a lot of them, you can if something bumps the tree, it's like a literal dust cloud of pollen. It is this tiny pollen, and it floats off, and it's sticky, and it gets on everything. And that's how the juniper tree propagates itself. But it is also very irritating. And so a lot of people are allergic to the juniper tree or the juniper pollen, because of how much there is and how it's sticky, and it just goes everywhere. So, like I said, if you eat local honey, you're getting some of those pollens, and it helps build up your tolerance to the allergies, so that you can so the allergies aren't as bad. And that's why juniper berry is in Hayaz, because the juniper berry doesn't trigger that allergic reaction, because it's the pollen that's triggering the allergic reaction. But the juniper berry will build your body's tolerance to the pollen, and it increases your ability to not have to deal with the allergies that come with it. So like here in New Mexico, the junipers pollinate in the spring, March, April, and that is like the worst time for me. Allergies nearly kill me every year in March and April, simply because of the juniper berry. And if I'm consistent with Hayaz, taking it every day, throughout the year, you basically have to build up a tolerance through taking Hayaz. It will help you so you don't have to deal with those allergies as much or as bad. So juniper berries. So it's in Dr. James's 20-herb book, and there's, basically juniper berries is just like any other herb as far as preparations. There's different ways to do it. Teas are very common. So if you're going to make a tea out of juniper berries, usually when you get them, they're whole. You can use, if you get the powder, that's different, but making a tea out of a powder is really difficult, because it either sinks to the bottom, or you're kind of like sucking on the powder and chewing on it or whatever. So it's not as yummy or delicious. It makes your tea gritty if you use a powder. And even if you put it into like a tea bag or something, powder doesn't fit. It like seeps out through the tea bag. So as far as making a tea out of it, getting whole berries is best. But before you brew it into a tea, you want to crush it so that they kind of like break open. So crush the berries, like just smash it. If you have like one of those pastry scrapers, a big flat thing, you can crush the berries that you're using. So as long as they're whole, and this goes with any whole seed when you're doing herbs, when it's whole, basically it locks in all of the oils and all of the good stuff that you're wanting from it, all of the nutrients and everything like that. As soon as you break it open, grind it, whatever, it starts giving off those oils and giving off those nutrients. So you want to keep it whole longer for storage purposes. So if you're going to crush it, you don't want to crush all of your juniper berries. If you're just going to use a little bit of it for a tea, just crush a little bit. And doing a tea like that is really great for if you've got, bloating, gas, anything like that. So like juniper berries and a little bit of peppermint, both of those are great. They'll help with bloating and gas and help you with digestion. We talked a little bit about lower back pain or kidney issues. If you're having troubles urinating, if you've got a urinary tract infection, making a tea out of juniper berries and like parsley, the thing about teas is you can mix stuff together and it really makes for really helpful herbal formulas. It's like a formula. And another nice thing about making a tea is it's small batch. So you make a little bit, try it with a couple of different things and see how it helps, how you react. So like if you're, so for example, if you're making something for your kidneys and a bladder, you're wanting a tea to kind of help with that. And this is how Dr. James did it at first. With his clients, it was trial and error. So he knew which herbs he wanted to use, and then he would go out and make them enough teas until his next visit. So whether it was a week, 2 weeks, whatever, but it was small batches. So he could like mess with it. And then when he came back, he's like, so how'd that work? What's it doing for you? And he would listen and find out what's working, what's not. And then he could adjust the formula, keep it the same. So it's kind of like making small batches. And then once you find something that really works, so Dr. James built the formulas that way. Once he found something that really worked, every single one of his clients responded to it and it all worked exactly the way he wanted it to, then that would be a formula. And he always kept notes on like what he used and which things he was swapping out, everything. So then once he had the formula, he'd get it in powder form, put it in capsules, because people are like, I'm done drinking that tea. That was just the sticks and the sink and the dealing with and the boiling the water. So he put it in capsules and handful and swallow, and there you go. So doing teas is a great way to do a small batch sort of thing. Anytime you can also do infusions. So like I said, juniper berry and in oil. So you get a good carrier oil. Olive oil is a common one. Almond oil. The thing about oils is they can go rancid. So you don't want to like be making a ton of it if you're not going to use a lot of it. But so with an oil, you just put the herbs in there and let them set for a couple of weeks. And that's how you make an infused oil. It's really easy thing to do. So like if you're making your teas and your small batch teas, and then you want to do an infusion, doing it in oil, or an alcohol will also draw it out. But like Scott, Dr. James's son, once said, basically your herbs are drunk. So the way a person is when they're drunk, they're still cognitive, they're still aware, but they're not as all there. So that's another way to make an infusion is in alcohol. And you do it the same way. You put your herbs in, leave it for a week to 10 days, and then you have like a tincture. Another way to do concentrated tinctures, and it's a little more work, is after you've made your teas and you found the formula you want, you put the herbs and boil them for a long time. So an hour and a half, 2 hours. So bring it up to a boil and then turn it down on low and let it simmer for a couple of hours. And basically that's super concentrating all of everything that's in the herbs. And then you strain out that water and you add something to keep it from going rancid or rotting or molding or anything like that. So common things are honey, vinegars, or a glycerin. All of those will help give you a shelf life to it. You still, after you make something like that, you want to keep it in the refrigerator to prevent molds or anything from growing on it. But that's a great way to make tinctures. And then of course, spices. You can get the juniper berries ground, but like I said, the oils once you open up a berry or a seed or anything like that, the oils go away. So, that's why in old kitchens they had like a mortar and pestle or something like that, so that you can crush up your herbs, your spices, whatever, and then use them. So then you're getting the oils. It gives you that richer, stronger flavor. And then another way that juniper berries are used is as an essential oil. So essential oils tend to be more complex to make. So, like buying them is always easiest, but it's always a external thing. For juniper berries, run external. But like I said, it's antimicrobial. So if you've got like something on your skin that you want to prevent from getting bad, some juniper berry oil on that. But it also relaxes the muscles. So it helps if you have that sore, achy muscles, especially if you have like lower back pain. Putting some juniper essential oils in a carrier oil like almond oil, olive oil works, but like as a massage oil, and then massage it into the sore muscles in your lower back. It will infuse the vitamins into those achy muscles, so that then the kidneys don't either have to be pulling it from there, or if the muscles are weak or for whatever reason, it will help it. So those are some great ways to use juniper berries. So some fun facts about juniper. In the Dark Ages, Middle Ages, they actually would take the juniper branches and hang it over their doors to prevent evil spirits from coming in. And like I said, they would burn it to ward off evil spirits and stuff. The Vikings were really common to do that. They had like bowls of incense, or in their fires, they would throw the juniper berries into them to help purify the space. And then, like, for back then, it seems like superstitious kind of thing, but because of the antimicrobial properties of the juniper berries, and there's an oil in it, and the oil basically makes it heavy, so it would latch on to anything. It would kill any microbes in the air, but it would also, that oil helps to drop any particulates in the air. So, sometimes it's like superstitious, but superstitious has, if you go back and look at the science of it, it's amazing what it does. If you look at during the Dark Ages, back during the plague and everything, juniper berry was a very common one that they would put in those. They look like those crow masks that they wear. So that big long nose on those, they'd actually stuff with certain herbs and spices. And juniper berry was one of them that they would stuff in there. So then the doctors or whoever would go around to see people would be breathing in air through the herbs and spices. And because of that antimicrobial of the juniper berry, it would help kill the plague, so the people didn't get it as well. So a lot of cultures use juniper and juniper berries. It's like as a symbol of protection, purification, strength. So, using it in your home makes it kind of fun. And it's always nice to have, it gives you it's got a kind of a woody taste. So it's great, like in your cooking, to kind of give your food a different flavor. So, definitely give juniper berries a try. They're wonderful. You can, most herb shops will have them. And if you can't find them in your local herb shop, then, we have them, or you can, anybody, there's all sorts of places online where you can get it and order it and try it. Or, if you live somewhere where you can get to a juniper tree, like here in New Mexico, they're everywhere. If you're going to go out wildcrafting, though, you want to make sure you're not close to a road or anywhere where, smoke or anything like that can float over to the trees, and find them in the purest place you can. It's a wonderful herb. It's a wonderful thing to have in your apothecary, and there's lots of suggestions for use in the 20 herb booklet that will be linked in the show notes in this episode. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I will look forward to sharing some more information with you next time. It is not the intent of professional herbal instruction or any persons associated therewith to diagnose or prescribe. The intent is only to offer herbal information for your consideration. In the event you use this information without your doctor's approval, you are prescribing for yourself, which is your God-given right. But professional herbal instruction or any persons associated herewith assume no responsibility. The claims and statements made on this podcast have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.